Here are some tips on how to use your Eclipse machine properly. Note that your machine will not work the same every time. There are many factors that will need your personal attention and minor adjustments that you might need to do to the machine to make sure that it runs a perfect stencil. There are three main factors that you must consider when making a stencil. First is the paper being used for your outline. If it's thick or thin. Also, how thick or dark your outlines are on the paper. We also recommend using laser copier over inkjet copier since the inkjet has an issue picking up the light for that one. Also, the last one is the type of stencil paper you use. All stencil paper don't work the same, so you might have to personally adjust it depending on what type of paper you're using. So next I'm going to talk about the adjustment knob. The adjustment knob does not increase the brightness or heat of the light bulb. This knob only adjusts the speed of the roller, which controls how long your paper gets exposure to the light. So as you can see, 0 being the slowest, 10 being the fastest, as you increase the knob, the roller spins quicker, which thus decreases the amount of exposure your paper gets to. So 0 means slowest, 10 means fastest. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate the creation of a stencil. First we need is our stencil paper. The center sheet is already taken out. Let me place my outline. As you can see, this is kind of a fine line outline. I'm going to run it through about a setting 6. As you can already see, the outline came out really good. Sometimes if you want a little bit darker, you can always turn up the setting a little quicker, faster the speed, just to do like a minor exposure, a quick touch up to it. So that way it gets a little bit darker. And as you can see, it's a little bit darker. The only issue I see here is when I push it through, I didn't center it 100% correctly, so you can see kind of like a double stencil outline being made. So just be careful of that. But you can always run it through a second time at a higher setting to kind of just touch it up. Here's the second stencil I'm going to make. Basically, it's on the same thickness as the previous paper, but the outlines are a little bit thicker. So we're going to run this at a little bit higher setting than the previous one. Because the other one had much thinner lines, we want to put a lower setting. Basically, it was about 6. But because these are much thicker and darker, I'm going to turn this to about 7 when I run it through. And as you can see, at the setting 7, it made a perfect stencil. I didn't have to run it through a second time or do a touch-up. As you can see, the temperature light is on. It's starting to flicker because it's starting to cool down. So one key thing is make sure your machine is cool. The fan will stay on for the whole time that it's on, so just keep it on. Next time you pass by, after 10 minutes or so, you can go ahead and just turn that off. At the same time, remember, as you're making stencils, the machine is getting hot. So if you're running your stencil at about 4 or 5 and it's running perfect, but then after making 3 or 4 stencils straight through, the machine's going to get very hot. So I recommend what you can do is if the machine's hot and you need to make a stencil, just go ahead and turn the speed up a little bit faster. If you're starting at 4, maybe go up to 6 or 7. That way when you run it through, okay, so the machine's as you can see, we have our 2 outlines here. This one has a much thinner line, this one has a much thicker, darker line. So remember, when you're using something thin and not dark, you want to run the machine at a much slower setting, because it's going to need more time to transfer over that heat. When you have something thick and dark, it's easier for the light to pick up, so you want to run it through a little bit fast. This one we ran about 6, this one we ran about 7. So depending on your machine and your preference and the paper you're using, that all depends on your personal adjustments and personal preference. At the same time, these 2 outlines use the same thickness of paper. So if you use a thinner stencil paper, you're going to have to run the machine much faster because the light goes straight through the paper when it's stencil paper. So at the same time, if you're having issues using stencil paper, we recommend making a copy with your laser printer and then going ahead and then just using the regular paper outline. So we would prefer not to use the stencil paper because sometimes it causes some issues and you might waste stencil paper. So also keep in mind that all stencil paper is not the same. The demo today that I was using the Atsui brand stencil paper. There are many brands of stencil paper out there, so just keep in mind that they all don't work the same, so you might have to find your personal setting based on brand of paper as well. Also keep in mind that not all stencil machines work the same. This machine worked great at about 6 and 7 when we were making the stencil outline, but some machine might be 5 and 6, so there might be some minor adjustments you're going to have to figure out with your own machine. But once you get used to it, the machine's working great. You know, if you have any other further questions, please feel free to give us a call, 1-800-333-4069. Your machine also includes a 1-year complete warranty on the machine. Thank you and have a great day.